What happened to me wasn't just harassment, it was invasion, an attempt to bulldoze through my land, my rights, and my peace, all because I didn't leave the gate open for a woman with a clipboard and an oversized sense of authority. This happened in Montrose County, Colorado. And if you've ever had a neighbor go too far, or an HOA president who thought they were sheriff, judge, and God rolled into one, drop your city in the comments. I want to know where else this is happening, because here, it started with a phone call to 911. And the only emergency was that I told Karen she couldn't inspect a ranch that didn't belong to her. Let me back up a second. My name is Owen. I'm a retired systems engineer who traded code and office cubicles for land and livestock. Bought 12 acres outside of Montrose after spending 30 years in Denver's tech gridlock. Wanted space, quiet, and a place to grow my own food and maybe breathe without hearing car alarms. I got all that for a while. Then HOA Karen moved in next door. She came from California, that's what I was told, and the first time I met her, she said something I'll never forget. I love how undeveloped it is here, but don't worry, I plan to clean it up. She wasn't joking. She joined the HOA within 3 months, became the president by month 6. And by month 8, she was introducing new compliance checkpoints, including an access window for large property owners to allow board members onto their land. I didn't attend the meetings, didn't care. Because I didn't think anyone could force me to give up my private gate code for someone to inspect my goats and compost piles. But Karen, she thought different. She sent me a letter by courier. Yes, a courier. Dear resident, as part of our updated HOA compliance initiative, all ranch-style properties are required to provide physical access to board-designated inspectors for review of structural conditions, livestock containment, drainage compliance, noise and smell levels. Noise and smell levels. In a rural Colorado community, I laughed, shook my head, tossed it on the workbench and forgot about it, until the next week when I caught a man taking photos of my property from just inside the tree line. I stepped outside. He flinched and turned. I asked, "You lost," he said. "Just doing HOA checks." "No, you're not," I replied. "You're trespassing. That line of trees back there, that's your boundary." He muttered something and walked off. That night I locked the ranch gate, changed the code, and installed a trail cam, because something didn't feel right. And sure enough, 3 days later, the real drama began. It was a Tuesday morning, sunny, quiet, not a cloud in the sky. I was mucking out the barn with my dog Samson, trotting between hay bales. Then I heard it, a vehicle approaching, fast, gravel popping, tires crunching. I walked out, pitchfork in hand, not as a threat, just habit, and there it was. A white Jeep Cherokee with flashing lights on the dash, red and blue. For a moment I froze, until I realized the lights weren't regulation. They were the detachable kind you can buy online. The kind teenagers used to pretend they're in a Fast and Furious movie. 2 men stepped out, polos, dark pants, tactical boots. One held a clipboard, the other had a fake badge hanging around his neck. I didn't say a word, just waited. Then the clipboard guy said, "We've received a report of a non-compliant structure and possible livestock hazard on this property. We're here to conduct an emergency inspection." I raised an eyebrow. "You're from the county?" "No, sir. We're HOA enforcement, partnered with local ordinances." "No, you're not, sir. I've lived here 10 years. I built this barn myself. I know every zoning reg from here to Grand Junction. You're not from any office I recognize, and you're not coming past that gate." He looked at the other guy, who shifted his weight, and said, "We'll need to call this in. You're obstructing inspection." Then he reached for his phone and said the magic words, "Dispatch, we've got a situation. Non-compliant landowner refusing to allow access. Possible aggressive behavior." That's when I saw her, Karen, standing on the hill at the edge of her property, phone to ear, watching like she was the foreman of a raid. My jaw tightened. "Hang up that phone," I said. "Right now." He ignored me, so I turned and walked toward the barn, calm, slow. Samson followed. I opened the side door, grabbed my external hard drive, and pulled the trail cam footage from 2 nights before. The same 2 men walking past the tree line. I sent it to a folder I had set up just for this sort of situation. Ranch legal. Then I walked back to the gate, opened my phone, and called the county sheriff directly. When the deputy picked up, I said, "Deputy Carter, I've got 2 men impersonating code enforcement on my property. No ID, no warrant, and one of them is trying to provoke an incident." Carter asked, Montrose Hills HOA again. Yep, sit tight, I'll be there in 20. The two men heard me. They stopped talking. The one with the fake badge looked suddenly unsure. I walked over to the gate, locked it, and said, nobody's leaving until Carter gets here. You made this mess. You're going to wait in it. They didn't like that. One of them tried to walk back to the Jeep, but I stood in front of the gate, hand resting on the latch, not threatening, not blocking, just present. Karen was still up on the hill. I raised my phone and took a picture. She turned away. When the sheriff finally arrived, the scene was quiet, but tight. Deputy Carter walked up slow, took one look at the two men and sighed. Badge, ID, department now, he said. Neither man moved. That's when I knew they weren't just faking a position. They were faking the whole thing. Carter read them the riot act, told them if they didn't leave immediately they'd be cited for trespass and impersonation of public officials. They left, fast, didn't say a word. Karen was gone by then too, her hilltop empty, but her voice wasn't done. That afternoon I got a voicemail. Mr. H, this is Karen Whitlock, HOA president. Your response today was completely inappropriate and will be escalated to the full board. Refusing access during an ongoing safety review puts the entire community at risk. I played it 3 times, then saved it, because I knew this wasn't over. I just embarrassed Karen in front of her team on her turf, and when people like her feel power slip, they don't let go, they grip tighter. The next day a second letter arrived. This one wasn't printed, it was handwritten. 2 words, we're not done. No signature. No return address, just left at my front gate. That's when I made a decision. They wanted access, they'd get none, not just to my land, but to the entire HOA property grid, because Karen had just activated the wrong man and I was done playing nice. By Thursday morning I had a plan. One Karen didn't see coming. You see, when you spend most of your adult life designing infrastructure systems for high-security environments, you pick up a few tricks, and when a bunch of clipboard cowboys try to bluff their way through your front gate, you don't respond with anger. You respond with architecture. The first thing I did was install 2 new motion-triggered trail cameras, one at the back fence, one at the south pasture line. I upgraded my gate's lock system with an auto-latch delay and remote override, then added a no trespass notice at every possible entry point, legal language, state code cited, QR codes linking to the sheriff's prior trespass report. But that wasn't the real move. That came when I walked into the HOA's next scheduled meeting. I hadn't been to one in over a year, but this time I wore boots, a clean flannel, and brought a binder so thick it slapped when I dropped it on the table. Karen was already sitting in the middle chair, smug, in her usual blue cardigan and a printed agenda that looked more like a mission briefing than a community newsletter. She looked surprised to see me. I sat down, calm, didn't say a word until public comments opened, and then I stood. 3 days ago, I began. 2 men claiming to be HOA enforcement showed up on my property without authorization, ID, or paperwork. One called 911 to falsely report a disturbance. Karen interrupted. That's not accurate, I raised a finger. I'm not done. I've submitted the footage, photographs, and audio to the sheriff's office. I've also forwarded a formal complaint to the Colorado State HOA Regulatory Board citing impersonation, harassment, and unlawful access attempts. The room went silent. Then I added, and going forward, no HOA board member, contractor, or volunteer is allowed access to any portion of my land without a signed, court-approved warrant. Karen scoffed. You can't block the HOA from conducting safety checks. I leaned forward. This isn't an apartment complex, Karen. It's a privately owned ranch on deeded land. I pay taxes to the county, not to you. Then I reached into my binder and pulled out a copy of the land use contract from when I bought the property, a document signed by the original developer and the county clerk, clearly stating that agricultural parcels are exempt from HOA visual compliance and structural inspection unless tied to communal infrastructure. I held it up. This is Exhibit F. It's now part of the official board record. And if I so much as see another laminated notice on my fence, I will file for a cease and desist under Colorado Statute 38 to 33.3. Karen's face stone, but her hands were fidgeting under the table. That's when I said the part I knew would land. One more thing. As of this morning, I've added a legal lockout clause to my property access logs. That means no one affiliated with the HOA, including board members, can step foot onto my land. Not for inspection, not for outreach, not even to hand me a flyer, people murmured. A few turned and whispered to each other. Karen tried to recover. You can't just unilaterally cut us off. I stood taller. You made it unilateral when you sent fake officers to arrest me on my own land. Then I picked up my binder and walked out without another word. That night, something strange happened. At 10:42 p.m., my trail cam pinged. I opened the alert, expecting maybe a deer or a stray coyote near the pasture. But it wasn't wildlife. It was a person in a hoodie, approaching my southern fence line with a flashlight. I zoomed in. Couldn't make out the face, but I could see the logo on the sleeve. The HOA's new volunteer enforcement unit, patch Karen had bragged about in her last newsletter. She sent someone again, this time at night, on private land. I saved the clip, flagged the timestamp, and emailed it directly to Deputy Carter. 15 minutes later, he replied, "Got it, that's enough for a trespass citation. Let us handle it, don't confront." I didn't sleep much that night. Not because I was scared. I've been under worse pressure in boardrooms with million-dollar systems on the line. But because I knew the kind of person Karen was now, not just power-hungry, desperate. Desperate enough to cross fences, send people in hoodies after dark, and lie to emergency dispatchers just to prove a point. The next morning, the sheriff's office posted a bulletin. Public, clear. Montrose County is currently investigating reports of unauthorized HOA enforcement actions on private property. Homeowners are advised to report any suspicious activity immediately. It didn't mention Karen by name, but she knew. That afternoon, she called me. Blocked number. I let it go to voicemail. "Mr. H. Owen, this is Karen. I don't know what you think is happening, but you're creating unnecessary hostility. We're just trying to ensure a safe and compliant community. Please call me back so we can resolve this peacefully." I saved the voicemail. Named the file, Exhibit G guilt call. Then I got a knock on my door. It wasn't a deputy this time. It was Rick, my neighbor 3 lots down. Quiet guy. Vietnam vet. Keeps to himself even more than I do, he said. "Heard you locked them out. Just wanted to say good." Then he handed me a brown envelope. Inside were 4 photos. Karen and 2 other board members standing near his fence measuring it, laughing. One of them writing something down. "I didn't say anything before," Rick added, "but they tried this with me too." That's when it hit me. This wasn't just about my ranch, it was about all of us, so I printed flyers, not digital ones, old school, just black ink on white paper. HOA access abuses must stop. If you've had someone show up without warning, if you've received fake violations, if you've been told your private property isn't yours, meet me Saturday at 6 p.m. behind the barn. No speeches, just facts. I left one in every mailbox on the loop, didn't knock, didn't explain. Just dropped them and left, and on Saturday, they came. 7 at first, then 12. By 6:20, I had 30 people standing behind my barn, folding chairs, thermoses, manila folders filled with letters and photos. Every one of them had a story. Karen had sent fake fines for unauthorized fencing, threatened one family with non-compliant livestock breeds, claimed one woman was harboring disruptive poultry, her exact words. Someone even brought a printed HOA memo that said, "All access gates must remain unlocked for compliance scanning between 9 a.m. and 4 p.m. on weekdays." Unreal. I stood on a small crate and said, "Look, I'm not trying to overthrow the HOA. I'm not anti-regulation. I'm anti-stupidity. And this is stupid." They laughed. But then they nodded, because it wasn't just about one Karen anymore. It was about control, fear, power without accountability. That night we made a decision. We weren't just going to resist. We were going to rewrite the rules, and Karen. She was about to find out what it feels like when the gate slams shut on her. Well, before we continue, if you're enjoying this story and love such dramas, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Every new subscriber keeps me motivated to dig deeper, uncover more wild stories, and bring you even crazier content. Your support means everything. It's what keeps this channel going strong. And trust me, there's plenty more chaos coming your way. Back to the story. By Sunday morning, word had spread across the entire HOA loop, not just about the meeting, about what we planned next. See, what Karen never counted on was that the people she thought were scared were just waiting waiting for someone to show them it was okay to push back. And now, the dam had broken. I'd already drafted a proposal, clean, clear, and legally structured. Not an emotional rant, not some wild rebellion. Just a formal document to initiate a vote of no confidence in the current HOA enforcement authority. All it needed was 10 signatures. By noon, I had 38. That night, I sent the document, by certified mail and digital copy, to the Montrose County HOA Advisory Board. Attached were copies of every fake violation letter issued by Karen, footage of the 911 call incident and trespass, attempt the trail cam image of her volunteer creeping along my pasture, and testimonies from 9 other residents. Notarized we didn't just lock the gate behind her. We were marching straight through the front door with the law on our side. But Karen didn't back off. She doubled down. On Monday morning, 2 things happened almost simultaneously. I received an HOA cease and desist letter accusing me of orchestrating an unauthorized anti-HOA conspiracy. Deputy Carter called to inform me that the man caught on my trail cam had just been issued a citation for criminal trespass and impersonating an enforcement officer. And guess what? He confessed. Said Karen told him it was part of the new volunteer compliance push. Said she assured him everything was legal and cleared with the sheriff. She lied. And now she couldn't spin her way out of it, Carter told me. We're opening a formal investigation. She's officially on the radar now. Just stay the course. And I did. That afternoon, I filed a motion to force a community-wide emergency HOA vote. Bylaws said any 25% of homeowners could demand one in response to administrative misconduct. We had 60%. Tuesday came with a knock on my door. This time, it wasn't Rick. It was Karen. Alone. Hair done up, sunglasses pushed onto her head, clipboard clutched to her chest like a bulletproof vest. I didn't invite her in. We stood outside by the gate, her voice, civil, fake sweet, practiced. Mr. H., I'd like to speak to you about the aggressive tone some of your recent actions have taken. I stayed quiet. She continued. There's been a lot of misinformation, and I think it's important we de-escalate before this goes further. I finally spoke. Karen, the only thing that's escalating is your panic. Her smile twitched. We all want peace, Mr. H., but when residents start organizing secret meetings and filing legal challenges, they're not secret, I cut in. They're public, transparent, and legal. She glanced at my cameras. You're intimidating people with surveillance and legal threats. That's not neighborly. I almost laughed. You sent fake cops to arrest me on my ranch. Pause. Beat. Then she said something that told me everything I needed to know. I did what I had to do. This neighborhood needs structure. Without enforcement, it's chaos. And who elected you to enforce anything? I asked. She didn't answer, just stared. Then she muttered something I'll never forget. You think because you have a badge you're untouchable, but badges can rust, communities last. She turned and walked off. But I wasn't angry, because she just said it out loud. This wasn't about compliance, it was about control. That night I installed one last security measure, a private motion alarm inside the barn, near the breaker that controlled perimeter lights. I had a hunch. And sure enough, that hunch paid off. At 3:42 a.m. the alert went off. Someone tried to kill the lights on my ranch. Didn't work. The system rerouted power through a solar backup. But the cam caught them. It wasn't Karen. It was one of her clipboard guys, same one who stood behind her at board meetings, always silent, always writing something down. I handed the footage straight to Deputy Carter. He called me back before breakfast. We're bringing him in for questioning. You were right. Something bigger's going on here. And that's when Carter said the line that hit me harder than any HOA letter ever could. This might not just be local anymore. Meanwhile, the community was waking up. The emergency HOA vote was scheduled for that Friday in the park just outside the neighborhood entrance. I'd arranged for a licensed moderator. No drama, no shouting, just a fair process. And by the time the sun set on Thursday, nearly every homeowner had RSVP'd, even the quiet ones. Even the ones Karen thought would never turn. Because once people saw the footage, the letters, the way Karen weaponized her role, they didn't just want to vote, they wanted change. Friday arrived, cool morning breeze, sun breaking through the clouds. We met under the gazebo, folding chairs in rows, clipboards passed out, ID checks at the sign-in table. Karen didn't show, but she didn't have to. Her shadow was there in every citation, every voice memo, Every nervous glance people used to give their own front yards. I stood up. Didn't grandstand, didn't gloat. I just said one sentence. Today we vote not just for leadership but for freedom. And one by one they signed. The vote wasn't even close. Out of 62 eligible homeowners, 57 signed the motion. That meant Karen Whitlock was officially stripped of her HOA enforcement powers, effective immediately. And according to the bylaws she'd ironically helped rewrite, any director found abusing their title was subject to a full audit, removal, and community-wide notification of misconduct. By 3:00 p.m., the sheriff's department had been sent a formal request for oversight. Karen had lost her grip. And for the first time since this war began, I saw something I hadn't in months. Neighbors smiling in their own front yards. But peace, that was still a day or two away. Because Karen wasn't done yet. She didn't show up at the vote. She didn't respond to the audit notification. But she did send an email to every homeowner at 4:12 p.m., subject line, restoring order statement from Karen Whitlock. I opened it while sitting on the porch, coffee in hand. And it read exactly like you'd expect from someone cornered but too proud to admit it. While I respect the recent vote, I urge all residents to reflect on the dangerous precedent being set. Without structure, this neighborhood will fall into chaos. I acted in the interest of safety, and I will not apologize for upholding standards that protect everyone. I remain committed to Creek Valley, even if others have chosen fear over leadership. That was her version of surrender. No apology, no ownership. Just another projection trying to make us feel like we were wrong for finally standing up. I forwarded the message to Carter. His response, "We've seen it. She's about to get more than an HOA vote." The next morning, the county oversight board sent an investigator, a plain car, clipboard. No drama. He asked if I could show him the documents, footage, and any other evidence supporting the community's claims. I led him to the garage where my folders sat in labeled boxes. Exhibit A, violation letters, Karen's handwriting. No legal basis. Exhibit B, fake HOA, compliance notices. Exhibit C, trail cam footage of her hired volunteers trespassing. Exhibit D, 911 audio from the false emergency call she made. Exhibit E, emails with headers and timestamps showing Karen issuing threats, warnings, and citations she had no right to give. He didn't say much, but halfway through reading her Community Threat Level 2 letter, he let out a short laugh and muttered, "This one's going in the training files." By Sunday, it was official. Karen was permanently barred from serving on the HOA board or representing the association in any legal or administrative capacity. The state HOA Review Council filed a formal censure, and the sheriff, he called to let me know, "We're issuing a no-contact notice. If she shows up at your gate again, let us know." I didn't plan to see her again, but she made sure that I did. It was late Monday afternoon. I'd just come back from town, restocking fence posts and chicken feed. Ranger ran up to greet me like he always does, alert, tail up. And that's when I saw the envelope, not in the mailbox, slipped under my gate, handwritten. No return address inside. One page typed. "You may have embarrassed me, but this won't last. Neighborhoods like this collapse without strong hands. When they do, don't come crawling back. You had a chance to cooperate. You chose war. K." I stared at the note for a good minute, then folded it, labeled it, Exhibit F, because the only thing more dangerous than someone who wants power is someone who loses it and doesn't know who they are without it. Tuesday morning, something strange happened. The gate keypad buzzed, unusual since most folks just called ahead. I checked the cam. It wasn't Karen. It was a courier, someone from town. He handed me a manila envelope and said, "This one's from county court. Have a good day." Inside, a civil notice. Turns out Karen had filed a complaint against me. She was accusing me of character defamation, obstruction of HOA operations, and inciting unrest within a peaceful residential community. It would have been laughable if it didn't come with a court date. I called Carter. Sent him a copy. He laughed, but his tone sharpened. "That's her last play. A lawsuit, most likely to scare you into silence. Should I be worried? Only if you're scared of standing in a courtroom and telling the truth." I wasn't, but something deeper was eating at me. Because Karen's letter, her lawsuit, her obsession with power, it wasn't just about me. It was about every person she'd silenced for years. The veteran with the old truck, the mother with kids and no time to fight letters, the retiree who didn't want to deal with confrontation. All of them had backed down once, but not this time, not anymore. By Wednesday, we'd printed every single HOA notice Karen had issued in the last 6 months. They were posted publicly on a corkboard mounted at the center of the neighborhood park, each one with a red stamp, voided. Fraudulent, unenforceable. People came by to look, read them, laughed, some took photos. Others just nodded quietly. It wasn't about humiliation, it was about clarity. And standing in front of that wall, I realized something. She didn't call 911 because I broke a rule. She did it because I locked her out from my land, from my control, from her illusion of power. And in doing so, I opened the gate for everyone else. Because now, the HOA couldn't touch us. Karen's voice had been revoked and her clipboard. Just a souvenir of how bad it got before we pushed back. The lawsuit didn't scare me, but it did something better. It galvanized the neighborhood. Within hours of word spreading, my front porch became a drop-off point. Printed statements, screenshots, photos of Karen peering through fences, confronting teenagers, zip-tying notices to gates. Even the widow 3 lots down, quiet, reserved, afraid of conflict, walked up with a trembling hand and said, "She fined me $150 for insufficient garden uniformity." I didn't even know that was a thing. I took it gently, added it to the growing pile, because now we weren't defending my name. We were building a case against hers. Carter filed the response with the court that same day. Alongside it, we included over 60 sworn statements from neighbors, 22 voided citations, signed by Karen, 3 audio clips of her threatening to handle things personally if the board didn't support her, and a 48-second surveillance video of Karen slapping a gate camera with her bare hand. Yelling, "This isn't legal." Carter sent the packet to Karen's lawyer directly, then texted me, "Case won't see daylight, she'll fold or be exposed." I didn't care which, either way we were winning. But you want to know the wildest part, the silence. After everything, 911 calls, fake patrols, threats, Karen went quiet, no appeals, no emails, not even another creepy envelope under my gate. For the first time in months, Creek Hills felt normal. But peace after chaos, it never feels real at first, it feels borrowed. Like at any moment the spell might break and the shadow returns, so I stayed sharp. I wasn't expecting what came next. Saturday afternoon, I was in the back pasture fixing a busted irrigation line when Ranger growled, deep, low, focused. I stood up slow, scanned the ridgeline. There, near the far fence, was a figure, not Karen. A man, baseball cap, clipboard, phone in hand. He wasn't on the road, he was on my land. I waved. He didn't wave back. Just turned and walked off like he hadn't just trespassed onto federal land marked with a no-access sign and a legal citation code. I pulled the SD card from the pasture camera that night, zoomed in. The logo on his polo, Creek Hills HOA Advisory Committee, which didn't exist, not anymore. The next morning I made coffee and drove straight to the new HOA coordinator's house, Doug. He opened the door like he already knew. "You saw him too?" I nodded. "You get footage." He held up his phone. "Same man, same outfit, different house." "Who is he?" Doug frowned. "Karen's cousin. She used him before, off the books." Of course. She was outsourcing surveillance now, trying to rebuild her reach through shadows. But she didn't count on one thing. We weren't afraid anymore. That same afternoon we met again at the neighborhood park, not for a vote, not for protest. Just to share. People brought food, folding chairs, kids, dogs. But they also brought paperwork, more letters, more emails, more fines, more stories. One man stood up and said, "She fined me for building a shed. I'm a disabled vet. That shed is my therapy space." A woman added, "She told my daughter to cover up while playing basketball." It didn't take long before someone said what we were all thinking: she's not done. Not until someone makes it official. So we made it official. We drafted a petition, one that would escalate the case from civil to criminal. And that same night, with 49 signatures in hand, I drove to the sheriff's office and delivered it myself. The sheriff was waiting. He looked at the papers, then looked at me. "Can you testify to all this?" I nodded once. "Every page." He didn't blink. "We're going to move this upstairs." That was the start of the criminal inquiry, not just into Karen's false enforcement, but into her abuse of emergency services, her fraudulent citations, and her contracting unlicensed agents to pose as law enforcement. 3 felonies, multiple misdemeanors, and more coming. By the next weekend, the media caught wind. A small local blog posted a headline, "HOA Power Trip." Woman accused of sending fake cops to veterans' ranch over zoning dispute. It got 12,000 shares in 3 days. National attention followed. Karen was finally famous for all the wrong reasons. But even then she stayed hidden, didn't show her face, didn't speak. She just vanished. No more porch appearances. No more cars slowly creeping past fences. Just a ghost in pearls with a clipboard, clinging to relevance. But it wasn't over, not yet. Because then came the best part. 2 weeks after the story broke, I got a certified letter from the state attorney general's office. Inside, we are launching a formal review of fraudulent HOA enforcement actions across the state. Your documentation will be used as a template for future protections. We thank you for your vigilance and for reminding us that authority must always answer to the truth. It wasn't a reward, it wasn't a medal, but it was a marker, proof that something changed because we didn't stay quiet. I built a new gate sign the next day, painted it myself. Right above the keypad, it doesn't say no trespassing. It doesn't say ATF, it says we don't scare easy. Ranger sat by my side while I hung it, tail wagging, eyes fixed on the wind, and in that moment I realized something. Karen didn't lose because we were louder. She lost because we were steady, because we stood, because we didn't fold when she made us her target, and when she called 911 that day, over a gate, a ranch, a locked fence, she thought it would be her trump card. But all it really did was show the whole neighborhood who she really was. 3 weeks after the criminal inquiry began, I got a phone call from a number I didn't recognize. Blocked. I let it ring out. 30 seconds later, a voicemail came through. It was her, Karen, no introduction, no apology. Just one shaky line. You made a mistake thinking this was about land. I replayed it twice, then sent it straight to the sheriff's office and added it to the folder labeled Karen, escalation attempts, because at that point I wasn't trying to win a personal battle. I was protecting an entire neighborhood from becoming her next experiment. Things moved fast after that. The state issued a cease and desist order on all HOA activities under Karen's name. The advisory committee she created dismantled. The patrols shut down. The fake citations officially voided. They even required the Creek Hills HOA to issue a written apology to every resident who'd received a notice while Karen was acting director. When mine arrived, I opened it under the porch light. It read, "We acknowledge that the actions taken under the direction of Karen Whitlock were not authorized by law, nor supported by the board. We deeply regret any inconvenience or harm caused. Signed by the new acting chair, Doug." I folded the letter, tucked it into the binder, and felt something I hadn't felt in months, closure. But the story wasn't done yet, because Karen still had one last move to play. Late Thursday night, a neighbor sent me a screenshot. A new post had gone up on a fringe community forum. Anonymous but unmistakable, same phrasing, same tone. It read, "Certain individuals in Creek Hills are manipulating the truth, weaponizing fear, and pretending to be victims. They want to erase structure, erase standards, erase order, but the community knows who really protected them." She wasn't letting go. She was rewriting the story again, trying to frame herself as the misunderstood protector. I could have responded, posted proof, unleashed the folder, but I didn't, because I didn't need to win the internet. We'd already won the neighborhood. A week later, a state investigator paid me a visit. He wore jeans, a button-up, and carried a soft-spoken energy you only recognize if you've worked in federal service before. We sat on the porch, talked through the timeline. He took notes quietly, occasionally nodding when I said something he already knew. Then he asked, "Do you think she'll try again?" I didn't hesitate. "She already is." He didn't press further, just flipped a page and said, "That's all I need." Before leaving, he stood, extended a hand, and said, "You built a blueprint, Mr. H. We plan to use it." The next day, the state announced the Whitlock HOA reform package. No fancy press conference. No big speech, just a few bullet points published online. All HOA officers in New Mexico must be registered with the Secretary of State. All citations must reference a specific statute, and board approval. No HOA representative may engage private security or compliance enforcement without proper state licensing. All emergency calls tied to HOA disputes will trigger an automatic internal review. They called it the ranch clause. I didn't name it, didn't need to, but everyone in Creek Hills knew where it came from. The community changed after that, not all at once, not dramatically, just small things. People started talking more. Neighbors I'd never spoken to dropped by with fence paint, dog treats for Ranger, even offers to help rebuild the broken back gate. And one afternoon, a teenage boy knocked on my door. He lived 3 lots down. Shy, quiet, said his mom never let him play out front during the Karen months. But now, can I walk my dog past your fence again? I nodded. He smiled like it meant everything, because maybe it did. We held a community potluck 2 weeks after Karen's name was officially removed from the HOA roster. No speeches, no protests. Just burgers, lemonade, and a bonfire built with old citations. People roasted marshmallows over notices that once threatened them with legal action for things like non-neutral curtain colors and unsanctioned plant types. I tossed in my own violation. The one she left the day she called 911. It read, "Failure to provide community access during property lockdown. Residents must allow periodic walkthroughs for neighborhood safety." As the flames took it, someone clapped, not for the fire, but for what it represented. We weren't scared anymore, we were free. But I still kept the binder, every photo, every document, every timestamp, not out of obsession, out of duty. Because people like Karen don't disappear. They relocate, rebrand, start over. And if she ever tried to do it again, in another town under another HOA, I wanted to be the reason someone stopped her faster. That's why I answered the phone when the state policy advisor called a month later. They were forming a civilian oversight council. They wanted me on it. Not as a politician, not as a watchdog, just as the guy who stood his ground when no one else would. I said yes. The story faded from headlines, but not from Creek Hills. It became a quiet legend about a rancher, a dog, a fake HOA patrol. And the woman who thought control came from clipboards and threats, she was wrong. Control doesn't come from power, it comes from fear. And once that fear is gone, so is the power. One afternoon, a moving truck pulled into Karen's old house. A new family, young couple, 2 kids. A golden retriever, the husband waved, the wife smiled. I walked over with Ranger and said hello. They said they'd heard a few stories about the woman before and the man who stood up to her. I smiled politely, said, "Don't worry, that chapter's closed." They laughed. "Good. We're just looking to raise our kids and plant a garden." I looked at the flower bed, new blooms, bright colors. No HOA notice in sight, perfect. That night I poured a glass of bourbon and sat by the gate. Ranger laid beside me, tail thumping in the dirt. The stars were out. The wind was soft, and the silence, it wasn't heavy anymore. It wasn't watching me, it was peace, real peace, earned not given. And as I glanced at the plaque on the gate, "We don't scare easy," I thought about the day Karen called 911 on my ranch, all because I locked a gate. All because I said no. And all because she thought her clipboard could outrank my badge. She was wrong. And now so was her entire playbook. Karen called the cops on my ranch like it was her backyard. She thought her fake patrols, scare tactics, and citations would make me fold. But she forgot one thing. You don't rattle a man who's already served. You don't fake power in front of someone who's lived with the real kind. And when the dust settled and her whole HOA empire crumbled, it wasn't because I shouted. It was because I stood still, stayed sharp, and locked the gate before she could ever step foot inside again.